More than one. Late night for the Lamont. Sandy and I don't stay up till midnight even on New Year's Eve. So, but I just wanted to say two things by way of introduction. One, it's just worth remembering it is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And talking about living your life to the fullest for something greater than yourself and a higher public purpose. I'm reminded of that in particular today. And over the course of the last few months, what we're able to accomplish together. The national headline, if you saw it, is Connecticut takes on a $3.7 billion deficit and solves it without raising income taxes. That's the national headline. And this is a state that's had a tough time over the last couple of decades, and I think it sends a message loud and clear that this is a fresh start for the state. I mentioned yesterday that we can focus a lot on the big bills we did. Paid family and medical leave, the most important new insurance program the state has seen in a generation, and we're doing it right in a fiscally responsible way. The fact that we couldn't even get a $1 increase in minimum wage last time around, and we have a minimum wage that's going to move to $15 in a responsible way, and then tied to cost of living thereafter. These are big things. But I also wanted to remind people last night that we've done a lot of things that don't get as much notoriety, which over time are going to be extraordinarily important for the state. I mentioned the 5G bill that seemed to just sneak in under the wire in the state Senate.
I took care of that, Governor.
Thank you for doing that. But, this state could be one of the first high-speed internet 5G states in the country. Talk about sending a message. Wind power. The idea that we could someday be energy independent. Right now we're at the end of every single electrical line, every single natural gas line, have the highest cost energy in the country, the lower 48. And this is the beginning of our energy independence and stabilizing the price going forward. I mentioned minority recruitment and a more diverse teacher population. It may not get all the headlines, but you want to make a difference for those kids in the cities. The opportunity to have a teacher that looks something like themselves, get the best and the brightest, give them an incentive to teach in some of our most distressed school districts. Those are some of the other things we did that are not other things, but part of a state that's going through a transformation, and we're just getting started.
So what makes you think anything's going to be any different regarding the transportation tolls controversy a week or two or three than it was in the past week?
Well, we're going to deal with this head on, Mark. I've had dozens of legislators come into my office and say, I know that if we don't fix our transportation system, if we don't speed up our transportation system, we're going to be stuck in the same economic rut we've been in for the last generation. And probably you're doing the right thing, Governor. I understand that, but it's a tough vote for me to take. I wish I could defer it somehow. Do you really need it? And I can tell you that over the course of the next couple of weeks, we're going to be sitting down with the legislative leaders and finding a way that we get this thing moving. As I said last night, nothing else. We now know, everybody's asking about it. Transportation, you just asked me about it, how important it is. I can tell you that compared to a couple years ago, Republicans and Democrats know that not only how important it is, but we do need $700 or $800 million additional dollars to do it. Obviously, the Republicans would like to borrow more. I'd like to use a user fee via electronic tolling. And we sit down and we find if there's some middle ground there. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to let people avoid a tough vote, because it's the most important thing we can do to get the state moving.
Last night, Senator Masson said something very interesting. He said, qualified his opposition to tolls, saying that there would be no Republican votes in the Senate if there were still 50 entries, leaving the door open for possible compromise. The question is, are you willing to compromise in any way, whether it's the number of entries?
Let's talk. You know me. Millstone, we talked and we solved something that looked like an intractable problem. The hospitals, we talked and we solved something that looked like an intractable problem. I'm ready to sit down with Senator Fasano and solve this thing. As long as it's in a real way, the numbers add up, and we get our transportation system fixed, not just for the next biennium, but for the next generation.
I believe the call that was passed for the special session was just involving school construction. Are leaving the call for transportation of the tolls to you? Are you concerned that they're afraid, meaning the Democratic leadership, that the tolls vote this summer is going to affect their majority potential in the next election next year?
No, tolls will be part of a special session. We'll make sure that that happens, and we'll make that vote.
I didn't say that very artfully. I'm sorry.
Will you call it in special session?
Yes.
When?
We're going to sit down with the leadership in the next couple weeks and work on this collaboratively, but we're going to get it done.
Is there anything you wish that had been done differently in your approach to working with them and trying to let them see where you're at?
We come from different worlds. You know, they've spent their whole life in and around building this building, and I spent my life as a business person, you know. So we've getting to know each other a little bit. And, you know, I see a problem and I want to solve it. And sometimes I'm in a bit of a rush. And this place, I've never heard the phrase, it's a talker. It's a talker. Sometimes people don't want to make a decision, and they want to talk it to death, or they want to study it to death, or they want to avoid a tough decision. And that's not the world I come from. And frankly, you know, when I ran as somebody who comes from a very different background than what you're used to around here. And I ran as somebody who started up a business and created jobs. And I ran as somebody who's going to have the mind of a small business person when it comes to solving problems. So we're getting to know each other. It's a building that's based on relationships. I didn't know everybody when I got up here. Susan knew a few more people than I did. And I think we've got good relationships, and the door is open, and we're going to be working together.
So the biggest expense that any small business faces is healthcare, and there was nothing done this year. It's going to get auction, died a very public death. There was nothing done this year to lower the cost of healthcare for small businesses. Is that a failure?
Well, it's not a success. Look, I was disappointed. I thought we put a good bill out on the table. Again, as a guy that comes out of small business, I pay a lot more for my health insurance per employee than the big companies I was competing with. And if you believe in small business as the engine of economic growth, we should have passed a bill that brings down the cost of health care for small business. You know, then Scanlon and Lesser came forward with a skinnied up bill. A bill that would have made a real difference, though. The idea that we were going to be able to get a federal waiver for reinsurance for folks with pre-existing conditions, Christine, and that would have brought down the cost of health care for everybody in the state, especially those on the exchange. So you've got to ask the people who talked that bill to death why they did it. Why did they say, I don't want to bring down the high cost of health care? Because that's what that bill would have done.
What's in the session that you can say helps small businesses? They're angry about a 50% increase in minimum wage, FMLA, scale back credit for capital equity, capital entry tax, a few other things. I'm wondering what your message is and that you think the session is to promote business development and economic growth.
I think it's a session that's going to jumpstart our small businesses and our economy. It's an economy, like I said, that's been stuck in the rut for a long time. We've been near the bottom of the barrel in terms of new job creation and in terms of business startups, to be more specific. Look, we did do a minimum wage. We phased it in over 4.5 years. We followed the lead of the Fiscal Commission. We're doing it alongside what our other neighbors are doing. We had some exemptions that make it doable. Look, I come out of small business. You want to pay people money that gives them incentive to show up every day and make sure they know that they're valued. Paid family and medical leave, I got to tell you, I was competing with Verizon. Every day, Verizon already offered services like that. Me as a small business, I had a harder time doing paid family and medical leave. So now this is the type of way that a small business can offer benefits that are A, well-deserved for people, and B, allows them to compete with the big boys. I think you can, look, everybody has an initial reaction, oh my God, it's changed, I'm not going to like it. I think you're going to find in a couple of years that this is something that's really making our state more competitive. And also it sends a message for young people and young women around the country. Connecticut may be a place you want to be to start a business or work.
Do you think it's fair that everybody has to pay that payroll tax except the state union represented state employees?
All I know is I'm locked into some agreement with the state employees that goes through something like 2027. So we'll have an opportunity to revisit that.
What do you say to people out there that are frustrated? Here's yet another Democratic governor and another Democratic-controlled legislature approving another round of tax increase bonus. And just remember, their assumptions of growth in there, such as withholding is expected to grow about 5.5%. So what do you say to people who are upset about these tax increases and say, there you guys go, it's the same thing, and you said last night that it was going to be fiscal stability, but if you look at that fiscal note, budget direction, it's right next year, it forecasts, there's red ink for the three out years that are listed. So what do you say?
I can say that bipartisan budget that they passed 2 years ago, that led us with billions of dollars of deficit in the out years. We're beginning to get control over that. I can tell you, Paul, that John Rowland said, I'm going to balance the budget and eliminate the income tax. He raised income taxes. Jody Rell raised income taxes. Dan Malloy raised income taxes. Susan and I said, this is a state that's going to live within its means. We have one of the smallest increases in spending the state has seen in many, many years, and we did it without raising taxes, without raising income tax rates. And that is the headline you see around the country. I think a lot of people know this is a fresh start for this state.
Will be paying more tax. And in terms of the income tax, one of the protests about the change in the cap to pass the entity tax is that in effect $50 million income tax increase on small business owners. Teachers who may have been expecting to see their exemption go to 50%, 25 to 50%, are now going to have to wait another 2 years, and according to the estimates, pay another $8 million in income taxes they might not otherwise pay. People who get sales tax brought, and they see that as
Inherited a $3.5 billion deficit, balanced the budget on time without raising income tax rates. I think that's the basic message people are going to see and hear and know it's a fresh start for Connecticut.
Is there any wiggle room on the whole Dalio FOI situation and contractors, et cetera, as that whole board is set up, et cetera? Or do you have any concerns about it? Obviously, it's in your budget, but any concerns about transparency? Every day of the week, every press conference we come here, everybody's talking about transparency, and it doesn't happen.
Well, first of all, let me just say, when we came into office, I said, I'm not raising tax rates, but I want to expect more from folks who can do more for the state of Connecticut. I want more good citizens. I asked the corporate community to do more, and they're going to be doing more in terms of loan forgiveness and helping us with economic development and recruitment. And you're right, I asked the Dalios and others to say, help us out in terms of education. And they've stepped up with a $100 million grant that we are matching. And that's an enormous initiative. So first of all, I think just like a little bit of, hey, thank you. Thank you for stepping up and believing in the state of Connecticut. Thank you for what you're doing. Yes, we're going to work out the details of how we put together this board. Yes, they're going to be Themis and Len and Marty and all represented there, Joe on this board. They're going to have minutes to every single thing that happens. We're going to be able to take care of this in a way that gives you confidence that the money's well spent. I'd like to get Jan Hockadell on there, Jan Hockadell. I want to make sure it's a board that gives you confidence that represents a broad cross-section of the state. But every once in a while, just say thanks. Thanks for what you're doing. Thanks for stepping up. Thanks for making a contribution. I think that's the tone we need as well.
Governor, are you considering having other bills come up in special session that didn't make it? I know there's a big election bill, but also what's up with the tribes and gambling? Is that going to be something that you want to restart? Would that be something you'll call on leaders back to?
I don't know. I mean, we're going to sit down, we're going to be talking to the leaders, get a sense of how broad or narrowly focused the special session ought to be. My sense is, the tribes deal still seems a little half-baked to me, so I don't know if it's going to be ready to go in a special session. Obviously, you heard the two items mentioned last night by the leaders. For me, resolving how we pay for our transportation upgrades is important. And we're going to have to get a sign-off on the hospital deal. And I just got to remind you, that's really important. You know, for the last 5 years, we've had litigation against the state. We were in real danger of losing that litigation. It would have been a $4 billion hit to the state of Connecticut. It was a black cloud hanging over the state for, 5 years. You know, in the last bipartisan budget, they said give back $400 million a year. That would have been a big hit to the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut. So one of the things we're going to be asking our legislature to do is ratify a deal which takes that litigation off the table, solves that, reduces our ongoing liability to the hospitals by an awful lot, and we did it through strong collaborative negotiation. And I got to thank the hospitals for coming to the table. They're solution-oriented. We got it done.
But are you going to restart your negotiations then with the tribes and the gambling interests, or is that something you're planning on the legislature to do?
No, there's nothing to, restart. We never ended it. You know, as you know, I want a deal that A, gets us out of the legal muck, B, is global, so it deals with sports betting and internet gambling, and C, has some facility there for Bridgeport, because that was a deal that I made, and we're still working on that.
Governor, when you ran, you seemed to have ambitions about making structural changes in the government. Business background. Now that you've been in office this long, you referenced the collective bargaining agreement that runs through 2027. How do your expectations of what you can do to make structural changes, how do they match up against what you now view as the reality of what you can do in that area?
I think we've made more structural changes than I've seen in this state in a long time. We fixed the teacher's pension in a sustainable long-term way where we were facing a really severe fiscal cliff, or in the case of a stock market or economic downturn, we would have been at incredible risk as a state. I'm still working with the hospitals and limbo and labor, but we have already achieved $40–50 million savings in employee health care costs in this coming year. In the year thereafter, we're going to find another $100 million in savings going forward. And wait for Josh Gabal when he gets going over at DAS. You know, first thing we're going to announce, not to steal any thunder, but as we start to centralize more and more of the functions, for example, personnel, do you really need 25 different personnel departments spread across all these different departments? You're going to find significant savings there as we begin to streamline what we're doing, that plus the IT.
So is DMV going to be, everybody, DMV is everybody's supposed to go to what is long as take up and you take up.
Yeah.
Is DMV going to be more efficient in 4 years from now?
You're not going to recognize DMV in 4 years, but more importantly, you're not going to recognize it next year, because we did get the bill in place that extends the period of time between licensing from 6 years to 8 years. That brings down those long waits significantly. And that's something that we can do now before we get the IT in place so you can do all those transactions online, Paul.
Governor, I asked this question a lot yesterday to lawmakers, asking them to grade your rookie season. I think it's only fair. How would you grade your rookie season?
I think we did pretty damn well. We got a budget on time. That doesn't always happen around this building. We did it in a way that's structurally supportable for the near term. That's pretty good. We kept faith with our municipalities, kept faith with education, so they can plan accordingly. I think that's pretty good. And we talked about a lot of the other items that have been stuck in the muck for a long time, like minimum wage. They weren't able to move that for years and years, and we got that done. I still got to fix the transportation system. We're going to get that done. A grade? I don't think you'd ask a student to self-grade himself.
I'll give the governor
Go ahead.
an A. I'll give him an A.
All right,
because
there you go.
We delivered on a lot of the promises that we made.
Matt Ritter's a very insightful guy.
Governor, with all due respect, if we could go back to Tulsa for 1 minute, actually, you mentioned transportation, so I'm not going out of turn here. In your world, an extra 50 or $100 a month to get somewhere is no big deal. But to average working people in New Haven County or Naugatuck Valley or Eastern Connecticut, it's a very big deal. That's why it's a difficult vote. Do you grasp that concept? We have more than 2 Connecticut's. We have several Connecticut's.
I grasp the idea that Naugatuck and the Valley hasn't added a new job. In fact, you see brownfields as far as the eye can see there. And you need a turnaround. I grasp the fact that what you want is good paying jobs, not just pay you good paying jobs at a place where your kids know they have a real opportunity there. And I know that you're not going to be able to do that unless we fix that transportation system and speed that up. I know, talking to folks, it takes them 20 minutes longer to get from here to there. I know what that means if you're doing a local delivery. I know what that means if you're a mom trying to get to work and also get back in time to pick up your child. We cannot let this fester as we study it and wait and put off any longer.
Going back to healthcare, there was a lot of hope that there were some really ambitious things that might be accomplished in this session, not just the public option, but other things. But really, in the bottom line, not much went through. We all heard the story about Cigna, supposedly making this threat. I mean, were the interests arrayed against these reforms just too strong? What happened?
I think we tried to do too much too late. I don't think we tried to do too much, but I think we tried to do it too late. And I think you're right, it's a big, important reform, and you want to get it right. And believe me, we're going to revisit it, we're going to bring it back. Starting with a waiver that Christine was talking about, that can immediately bring down costs for the state, not costing the folks here any money. So maybe we do it in pieces, but we're going to get it done.
I mean, should Sydney even be at the table though? They are insured in the state, yes. They have 0 customers in the marketplace that would have been impacted by the Connecticut option. 0.
Right.
Why should they have a seat at the table?
I think everybody that's relevant and is a stakeholder has a seat at the table. The advocates, the patients, the small business, insurance folks. I want the very best ideas so we can come up with the very best solution. But nobody has a veto over the right solution.
What did the Cigna CEO say?
What did he say to me? I called him. I said, this is the deal that's going to be done. And he said, let me take a look at this. As Christine pointed out, they weren't necessarily in the small business market. He's a good Connecticut citizen. He wants to make this work. I want to take the best ideas I can from them.
So to be clear, you're not really ruling out talking about other stuff.
Maybe water.
Could you get him some water, somebody please? Ron, Rob? You're not ruling anything out in these discussions. Your prime focus is transportation, obviously, for the call especially.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're figuring it out.
But you're open to gambling and all of this stuff when you meet with the leaders, is that correct? If we present that to our viewers and readers, is that accurate?
I think that's accurate. Here, ask these guys a question. I think we're done. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Happy birthday, Mark Hasniokas.
Oh, how old is Mark?
22.
21.
Old enough to know better, but not enough to do it.
Wow.